Welcome to the second program of my mini-series, Sew Simple with Rectangles and Squares. During this three-part series, I'm featuring streamlined yet modern projects that take 1, maybe 2 hours to sew. The Hold It sacks are my first Sew Simple project. Prop up your cell phone or electronic tablet in the cradle area of the fabric sack. Made from laminated fabric, it's ideal to use throughout your home or office. The unique finished shape appears as if it was made from a complicated pattern, but not this gadget holder. It's all made from rectangular shapes. Sew Simple with Rectangles and Squares, that's what's next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, making a difference in sewing, quilting, crafting, and needle arts for over 30 years. Amazing designs and Class A needles.
The Hold It sacks are made from 3 different types of rectangles. Laminated fabric from the very large one, filled with rice and fiber fill so that an electronic tablet can fit right in the cradle. The cell phone or the tablet can be held securely horizontally or vertically. Kind of a conversation piece. They're funny looking projects, but yet great for techie projects. Laminated fabric is my fabric of choice because it's easy to clean and has a nice finish to it. 10 by 12 for the smaller size, 12 by 18 for the larger side, just one layer of the rectangle. Then there are small little pieces that you're going to be cutting, smaller rectangles, just to show you what they are. The cording is cording that's used for pillows. This is a fusible cording, a 3-inch rectangle. The little tab at the top is a 2-inch square by 3 inches that has the perforated strap fabric fused to it. Then you fold it in half along the perforations and create the tab. Pretty simple. And the base is much the same. There's a base here made with a larger strip, a longer strip of the fusible strap material or interfacing. So those are some of the pieces that you'll need to create this. To make this unique shape, I'd like to show you how it's accomplished. The rectangle is folded in half so that the short edges are meeting, and then just stitch a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, which is done here. Then sew the top edge, but before doing it, wrap the corner, folding it along the seam line, and you can pin on laminated fabrics using clips or fabric clips. Then sew across the top, but leave an opening. This is where the rice or the beanbag pellets are going to be inserted. Now, as if you take a close-up look at this, we left an opening and then stitched to the cut edge at each opening. So when I turn this right side out, that edge is very easy to turn. You'll see that in the very last step of this. So far, pretty simple. Now we're going to fold this. Fold it so that the triangles are predominant at the corner so that you're creating this shape so that the seam is stacked one on top of the other and you get a triangular shape, and pin across the end and do the same on the other side. Now the other side doesn't have, it only has one seam, it's straight on the fabric, and you take this to your cutting mat. And it doesn't have to be exactly 3/4 of an inch, although that's the measurement I used. Trim off 3/4 of an inch from the corner, each corner. And we'll flip this over and do the same. Trim off 3/4 of an inch. In this opening, we're going to be placing the little tab piece so that you can easily move your Hold It sack around the house or wherever you'd like to put it. Then in the end, that does not have a vertical seam, just has one seam at the very top. You're going to put your little piece of fabric for the tab, and you sneak it in there, pin it, and then sew the seams. So both of these little seams as I am pointing at. And on this particular sample, it's already been stitched, and now you turn this right side out. Now, if you're not working with laminated fabric, just cotton fabric, I would recommend to add fusible interfacing to the back of it to give it a little extra support. You can see it's got that shape now. Looks like some of those little containers that hold sour cream. When you order a baked potato at a restaurant, that's how we got the shape. Then align the seam that's in the fabric so it's in the center. It's starting to look like a folded sack. The base is formed by measuring 3.5 inches from the cut edge. So I'll just measure up 3.5 inches, and I would pin this base into place. Now, this is not complicated sewing, so if you measure 3 1/4, it's really not going to matter. You can just approximate 3.5 inches. My next sample has this stitched into place. Here it comes. It's stitched, and then I pressed the 3-inch fabric around the piping. Now, this piping has fusible web around it so that when you press it, it sticks. We have extra fabric at the ends that are folded, and that's placed at the base of the, let me get some pins, the base of the little stand. Now, the last stitching by machine is to stitch the remaining tail or the section. You fold it once, fold it twice so it meets together, and stitch. Here's a close-up. I'm using the zipper foot to stitch along the edge. If the foot sticks, you may want to line the fabric with some tissue paper to help sew this area. And here's this funny looking little project. It doesn't have any rice in it yet, but you'd fill the bottom with about 2 cups of rice. Then add the remaining stuffing with fiber fill and hand sew the folded sack closed at this end. Put it on your counter, on your desk, charge your cell phone, view your electronic tablet, and you have a clever home decor item made with rectangles. Toss them in a game or use them to hold down pattern pieces. These mini sacks can be both fun and functional. You can easily make 3 mini sacks in an hour or less. This has to be the simplest technique I've ever shown on Sewing with Nancy, but I'm sitting at the sewing machine, going to sew one for you. I like to use them as pattern weights, just to give you some ideas on how to work with laminated fabric. It's not very difficult at all. You'll use a traditional needle, maybe you change to a sharp needle to go through the layers. It's cotton fabric covered with a light coating, the laminated coating. This piece of fabric is a rectangle, 4 by 6, folded in half, meeting the short ends, and kind of do a finger press or a crease so that you can center the tab. This is the same size tab as I used earlier, a 3-inch strip folded in half, and then pin or clip. And with laminated fabrics, you're going to want to use some clips for positioning. Then fold this in half. I'm going to center that a little bit better. Fold this in half and then clip again to hold it in place. And then we're going to do the stitching. 1/4 of an inch seam allowance is all that's needed for this particular technique. And just as you go over the center, it will easy to sew that seam. And then we're going to wrap the seam. Now, when working with vinyl, it's hard to turn the corners. So wrapping the seam makes it so much easier. Just fold the fabric along the seam line, and then I'll start to sew, tacking down the seam allowance, holding down that seam allowance. So it's 2 seams at the sewing machine. I'll lower the presser foot. And really, I'm not pinning right now. I'm just holding that down, kind of finger pinning it. And that's 2 of the 3 seams. Then you can turn this right side out. It's slightly tacky, so I'm going to show you one that I've already turned right side out. And get the corners pointy, fill it with a little rice or some pellets. Now at this point is where you center the remaining seam. And we got a little rice coming out, fold under the seam allowances. Now move your needle on your presser foot all the way over to the left side. So I have the seam allowances pressed under, finger pressed under. I have a few rice pellets moving out, and then stitch the seam. Now you may find, I'm not finding it right now, but if you find that the foot does not glide along the edge, you can place down some tissue paper, but because I'm sewing half on the fabric and half off the fabric, it really doesn't matter. And maybe bar tack at the end. Now, in that short of time, you've created a sack to use to hold on your pattern pieces, and you've learned how to work with laminated fabric. Don't settle for tan or black bins for your shelf. Customize fabric bins to accent your home decor by selecting coordinating fabrics. Made, you guessed it, from rectangles and squares. The sewing is enjoyable and the end result is as fresh in appearance as it is functional. We chose a coordinating fabric group to make our 3 sizes of the fabric bins with grommets, and you can see the fun lining color that we chose for all of the designs to carry the look through. The grommets, small to large, inserted in the side ends. Oh, they're really speedy to put together. I love the fabric options that you have because you get to choose the fabrics. And the square and rectangle sizes are on the table. First, the rectangles. The small rectangle is 12 by 8. And then you see a line across the top. 1 inch from the top, you place a line because that's going to be the line to cut. There's a craft interfacing and a lining is cut 1 inch shorter. The square portion comes by cutting out squares from the lower corners. From the small one, a 2-inch square. For each bin, you'll need 2 pieces, 2 sides, and for the medium size, we have a 16 by 9.5. Remember, all the dimensions are given in the book that accompanies this program. And then the 3-inch corners are cut out. The third one has a 21 by 13.5 inch square with a 4-inch corner removed from each area. And you possibly can see, as you've been looking at these pieces, that we basted the craft interfacing to the outer fabric. You just have to baste it quickly along so it stays into place. Lining is cut out the same size as the craft interfacing, shorter. We're not going to be doing a lot of sewing as we look inside that 1 inch. The reason to have that extra 1 inch, it's folded over and pressed into place. And this edge is cut with the pinking shears or a decorative blade of your rotary cutter. Sew the lower seam first. Meet right sides together. 1/2 inch seam allowance is what I'm recommending. And you sew that lower seam, but this is a pretty springy seam. It has a lot of bulk in it. So to hold that seam flat, stitch with a multiple step zigzag as I'm doing right now. Just sew across that seam to hold all the layers flat. If you want to give the bottom of your bin some extra support, you could cut a small rectangle of that craft interfacing, 1/2 inch shorter than from each side than the base, and just top stitch that in, or even use double-sided basting tape to hold it. This is a bin, this is not something you're going to be wearing. Now, the top, to make this really fast and easy, use paperback fusible web, 1/2 inch wide, and place it or fuse it to each end. Now this happens to be the pressure sensitive. You don't have to fuse it the first time around, just press it down firmly with your finger, and at this point then do some trimming. With the decorative blade, just trim off the excess fabric. And now you have the edge finished. I told you this is a program called Sew Simple. Then some sewing of the side seams. In this particular sample, the side seams have been sewn. You see they're kind of springy. So to press it, use a dowel or a seam stick that is flat. It's rounded so that you can press open along the curve. It helps do the shaping and give it plenty of steam along this area to press open the seams. Then to sew the corners is what's left. And the corners really shape by themselves. The side seam is met to the lower edge and sew across that end. Simple as that. And you may want to trim off the excess seam allowances with a decorative blade just to get rid of some of the bulk in this area. Then you can turn this right side out and make your lining piece. Rather than using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, make it just a little deeper. 5/8 would be the trick. Let me get my pieces. And here's the lining piece. Meet wrong sides together, tuck it in, and take some time to pin the lining and the craft interfacing together. I've already removed the paper backing and then just wrap it around. Now you're going to take more time than I'm doing right now, but make it smooth and then press all these layers together. Press from the inside and there you go. That's all that's to it. Now, you're going to finish all the way around the edge, but that gives you the general idea. The finishing point for the bags and bins, these aren't bags, these are bins, are the grommets at each end. I recommend to make a sample before putting a grommet in your bin. Piece some fabric so that it has a seam, just the way your fabric in your bin has a seam. Truthfully, the larger grommets are easier to put in than the smaller grommets. In the packaging, there'll be a template where you'll measure down the distance that you'd like the grommet and trace an opening. You can see I've already cut the opening. Take some time and trim off the craft interfacing. Trim that out a little further. Then place the grommets on the right side and the wrong side. And kind of wait till you hear them snap together or kind of click, and then press it down and click. You'll hear the two going together. Then you can see how much pressure you have to apply to put it into place. So add a grommet at each end, large or small. The choice is yours. What's good for the shelf is good for the wall. With a little tweaking of the instructions, fabric bins turn into wall pockets that provide organization and style to any home or office. Again, I've chosen some fabric coordinates to create the 3 sizes of the wall pockets. These sizes were just kind of determined, but what we thought looked good. And the grommets add a little interest to the front, plus some trim, and then 2 grommets in the back so they can be hung by the mountable clips that you can place on your wall. The sewing is identical to the construction of the bins, with the addition of a little trim and number of different grommets that we have put into place. The sizes of the bins, you can really make these any size you'd like. The small, the pattern rectangle started out 9 by 10 with 1-inch corners cut out. All 3 wall pockets have 1-inch corners. The medium is 11 by 15. And the large that I have right here is 15 by 14. Like before, the craft interfacing and the lining is cut 1 inch shorter for all 3 sizes at the top. So you just mark 1 inch and fold it down, and that's the size that you cut the craft interfacing. If you'd like to add some trim, which I thought tied the 3 fabrics together, you can use the pressure sensitive adhesive or fusible web and place the trim for the large size 2.5 inches down from the top. And you stitch this on first before you sew the side seams, but then construct the wall pockets just as the bins. Simple as that. So once you learn a technique, you have several options. Now, in working with the grommets, I want to spend a little time talking about this. The front grommet is totally a decorative accent. Small grommet has to go through many layers of fabric. Make certain that you trim away that inside layer, the craft interfacing, before you snap the layers together. And then center or align 2 grommets on the back so that you can hang them on the wall. So whether it's fabric bins or wall pockets, the sewing is simple with rectangles and squares. African communities are rich with artistic traditions. We may be familiar with the history and artistry of African people in the Americas, but we know little or nothing about Africans in other parts of the world. To share the fascinating story of Sidai Women's Quilting Cooperative of India is Henry Druhl. Welcome, Henry, to Sewing with Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
I saw your exhibit from the women's cooperative quilts on display at a quilt show and drawn to them by color. And you have created exhibits from these. Share with our viewers how you became interested in working with this group of women.
Well, my career has been on learning about studying the history of arts of African peoples, both in Africa and in diaspora, in the places where African people have found themselves. And my wife was going to do some research in India, and she said, if you want to spend some time with me, you might want to get a grant to come. So I followed her and went to India, got a grant, and began to research African communities in India, people who have lived there for centuries now, and these are the descendants.
And the quilts that are made in India by the women there, you'll see a close-up right now. The quilt that I'm holding has great color. And tell us how they begin creating the quilt.
Well, in these communities, they're relatively poor. Mm-hmm. These are independent communities that live in the forest areas of the Western Ghats. They'll use their clothing until it can no longer be worn, so they take remnants from the clothing of their family members. And then there are periodic markets of secondhand clothing that they'll also purchase things from. They'll get a sari that they put as the backing for the quilt, and once they have enough remnants and the sari backing, they begin to make the quilt. So it's a kind of visual documentation of the fashions of family members over a period of 2 or 3 years.
Now I'm specifically holding this corner to remind myself for you to tell the story about how they begin quilting.
Right, okay. Well, actually, they begin the quilting by going from a corner all the way around with a continuous running stitch until they reach the center to finish these baby quilts that you're looking at now.
And the center motif is just that. It's a showstopper, usually.
Yes, it is. Usually, I like to think of it as a kind of design flourish, where the woman is coming to the conclusion of this wonderful work and will put extra time and effort into the patterns at the very center.
And the maker of this quilt, we need to recognize her. Her name?
Yes, her name is Katumbi Muzawar. She lives in the village of Mainalay, and this is where the quilting cooperative began.
The second quilt that you brought along with us has a great focal point in the middle, that purple frame area, but in the corners there's interest because you talk about the motif. You told me about the motif that's in most corners, and as in this quilt.
Oh, right, yes. In those quilts, there are two motifs that usually occur. A series of lozenge shapes multiplied, and in the very corner of the quilt, as you have it here, 3 of them, these are pula. They're called pula, which means flower. It's a piece of fabric, usually of a distinctive color, that is folded 2 or 3 times and then sewn. Now, this is where the quilt begins, at the corner, but this is also where it ends. Because as I asked the quilters, they said, well, why do you put these pula or flowers in the corner? Because this is the final thing that's done. They said, you know, if we didn't put the flowers in the corners of the quilt, either one or multiple ones like here, the quilt would be naked. That is, unfinished.
Well, maybe we have to start doing that in this country.
I think so.
Adding a few little flowers to the corner. It adds a nice detail to it.
Yeah.
And you bring these quilts to this country. They're sold. They help support people who make them.
Right. I've done actually several exhibitions of the quilts, one in New York at the Schomburg Center. Another one was held at the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco. I've held an exhibition of the quilts here at UW-Madison, and then you saw them at the Quilt Expo.
Yes. Well, they're stunning. Thank you for sharing this great program with us, Henry, and for bringing this information to us. There's something we can learn from every culture. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Nancy.
If you'd like to have more information about the CIDI Women's Cooperative, you can go to nancyzieman.com, where we find all things Sewing with Nancy. You can rewatch my interview with Henry, rewatch the program of today, and go to Nancy's Corner and click on Henry's name for more information. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.
Nancy has written a fully illustrated book entitled So Simple with Rectangles and Squares that includes all the information from this 3-part series. It's $14.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2801. Order item number BK2801, So Simple with Rectangles and Squares. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at nancyzieman.com to see additional episodes, Nancy's blog, and more. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Class A Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Pellon. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.